Welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. Years ago, I began recording the bedtime stories I told my children every night. Now, we would like to share those stories with you. I hope you enjoy my Stories for Wonderful Children.
Once upon a time, there was a giant. Now, in the land that this giant lived, it was not unusual at all for there to be a giant, for there were many giants in the land. The name of the land was Brobbinobbi.
Brobbinobbi?
Brobbinobbi. And
Brobbinobbi?
Yes, and it was a land that had...
Weird name.
It was a land that had many, many giants in it. But this
Like
giant,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18.
Exactly 18 giants, that is correct. That's how many there were. But this particular giant, whose name was Rufus. Rufus was unusual and special among the giants because Rufus had red hair, and he wore red clothes, and he had red skin. He was Rufus the Red Giant. Now, there was something else unusual about Rufus. Most of the other giants that lived in Brobbinobbi were carnivores. They liked to eat meat. So they would eat cows and sheep and rabbits and dogs and cats and horses and really just about anything that they could catch they would eat. Except they did not eat people, because they knew that if they ate people, the king would send his knights after them. So, they did not eat people, but they ate all the other animals that lived in Brobbinobbi, so much that sometimes the people were very hungry.
Would they eat sheep?
Yep, but Rufus was different. Rufus did not like meat. He did not eat sheep, he did not eat cows, he did not eat dogs, he did not eat cats, he did not eat anything that was an animal.
He didn't eat sheep.
Instead, he liked to eat plants. He thought that trees, for instance, were delicious. He would grab a tree and pull the whole thing up, roots and all, and then he would munch on it like an ice cream cone. Well,
Like he would just pull our tree up out of the ground?
Yep.
Wow.
Rufus's favorite place to go for a snack was the king's forest. But he knew that he should not go to the king's forest, because if the king ever caught him pulling trees out of the ground and munching on them, he would be most displeased.
Not pleased?
Yes, he would be displeased, which means not pleased, unhappy. One day, Rufus had snuck into the king's forest and was just in the act of pulling up a tree and beginning to munch on it, when the king and a party of his knights came riding by. The king was very angry, and told Rufus that he would have to do something to make it up to the king for all the trees he'd eaten. He told Rufus that what he would have to do was get rid of all the other giants from Brobbinobbi, because they were eating too many things. And Rufus said, "How am I supposed to get rid of the other giants?" And the king said, "That's your problem. You have 3 days to do it." Well, on the first day, Rufus could not think of any really good ideas, but he visited 3 of the other giants, Wildo, Crumpo, and Nice-Stack, and he convinced the 3 of them that they ought to move to Africa, because in Africa there were elephants, and elephants were big, tasty animals that would be delicious to eat and really fill you up even if you were a giant. So those 3 giants moved away, and then there were only 14 giants left in Brobbinobbi, plus, of course, Rufus. Well, Rufus knew he would have to get rid of more giants than that. So, the next day, he called as many giants as he could find, and he managed to find 10 of them, and he convinced them to play a game of Follow the Leader. And he had them play Follow the Leader, and they followed him, and he was leader first, and he led them right out of Brobbinobbi, and he led them right across the land of Hakundajunga, and he led them through also the top northern corner of the land of Kachunkatong, and finally they arrived in the rocky plains of Kahoo. And there, Rufus managed to do something which is very difficult for a giant. He told the other giants that he had to go to the bathroom and that he would be back in just a minute. And then he went and he hid. He found a deep canyon and he hid in it. He hid in it all the rest of that day until it was nighttime. And that night he took out the map that he had made and he snuck back to Brobbinobbi. Now, giants have a notoriously bad sense of direction. And so the other giants who did not have a map were stuck in that other country. And fortunately, in that other country, no people lived. It was all just animals. So the giants did not starve, but nor did they bother any people there. So Rufus woke up on the third day, the day that he had to be finished, or he would have failed the king's task.
How many giants did he have left?
He still had 4 giants left that he had to get out of Brobbinobbi. Well,
what did you say?
He still had 4 giants left that he had to get out of Brobbinobbi. 3 of those 4 giants he managed to get rid of fairly easily by convincing them that they should swim to the other side of the ocean, because as they were swimming across they could catch whales, and whales were really tasty eating. And he wasn't sure if those giants made it across or if they caught any whales, but they seemed very eager to try, and that was the last he saw of them. However, the last giant remaining besides himself, whose name was Sunny, was unfortunately an extremely clever giant, and he had noticed that all the other giants were leaving, and so he was not inclined to trust anything that Rufus said. And when Rufus came and told him that he should go to Africa because the elephants there were tasty, Sunny said, "No, I think I like it here." And when Rufus tried to convince him to play Follow the Leader, Sunny said, "No, I don't like that game." And when Rufus tried to convince him to swim across the ocean to catch whales, Sunny said, "Whales just don't sound very good to me, and I don't like to get wet." And Rufus just stood there, and Sunny said, "Why are you trying to get rid of us all anyway?" And Rufus stopped for a minute, and he said, "It's because I'm trying to save you, because the king has decided to get rid of you, and he's going to send his knights against any giants who are still here. So I'm trying to save you from them." And Sunny said, "Well, why didn't you just say so in the first place? I'll go live with my cousin Hakungak in the land of..." And Rufus said, "The land of..." And the other giant said, "Yes." And Rufus said, "Well, that sounds like a good idea."
That's a very weird name.
It is.
That is a weird
As the
name.
sun set, Rufus went back to the castle, and there the king was waiting for him with his knights around him, and Rufus said that he had managed to get rid of all the other giants. And the king sent out his knights to check, and they reported back that the other giants were indeed nowhere to be found. And so the king awarded Rufus the title of Duke Rufus, and informed him that because he had done such a good job of ridding the land of giants that were eating people's sheep and cows and goats, that he was allowed to eat 3 trees out of the king's forest every day, and that he was also allowed to pick as a snack anything he wanted out of the king's gardens. And from that day to this, Rufus has been very well fed and very happy as the only giant in the land of Brobbinobbi.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's story, but questions and witty commentary were supplied by my children. The music was created by Brandon Thompson. If you enjoy the show, please tell someone about it or leave a review on your podcast provider. Our website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.com, and you can also find us on most social media. I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.